What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, we've got the RB0 strategy, probably one of my favorite videos of the entire offseason because of how good of a conversation we can have in the comment section, in the community around this topic, because it's a really important topic to think about and go over, because I know a lot of people that will just blindly follow it. I know a lot of people that will just blindly not do it. They will make sure that 100% of the time they're not doing this. So I want to go over what it is, why it's a thing, how it's come about in the past, its success, and then what it would look like this season. Because every single season I do this video and I show you what a team would look like normally and then with RB0. So before we get into that, it's the stat of the day. To yesterday's stat of the day was which team had the best overall receiving grade. It was the Detroit Lions. The winner, Ryan Frank. Today's stat of the day, since it's RB0 strategy, we're going to do wide receiver question. What wide receiver with a minimum of 50 targets had the lowest catch percentage in the league? So minimum 50 targets, lowest catch percentage in the league. Let me know who you think that is in the comment section down below. Another reminder is the giveaway. At 13,000 subscribers, we'll be doing another giveaway, signed T.Y. Hilton picture. This time, all you got to do be subscribe to the channel and follow both me and Dare on Twitter. Links to that in the description box down below. If you're watching this after we hit 13K, which a lot of you will be, we have another one going on where you just keep rolling through the giveaways. So same rules apply. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Twitter. Let's get into this video. So I'm going to start off with why it's a thing from a standpoint of projections. And there's a few different reasons why it's a thing, but we'll start off with projections. It is much easier to project wide receiver success from a season-long standpoint than it is running back success. There are a lot of different factors that go into why a running back busts. One of them is injuries, like I'll bring up, but another one is that they get replaced sometimes. You know, a backup overtakes them. That doesn't happen to wide receivers. So part of the range of outcomes that is there for running backs isn't there for wide receivers. We know A.J. Green can get hurt, but A.J. Green isn't getting passed by John Ross. That's like a fact that we know. But there are a lot of running backs that are maybe on that high end that could. I mean, is Kenneth Dixon going to take over Alex Collins? Probably not. But could it happen? Yeah, there's a world in which it does happen. So there's that scenario. But it's also just the flip-flop. So week to week, the variance at wide receiver position is extremely high. You know, just basically think of guys like Amari Cooper and Julio Jones. You should not be shocked when they have 2 for 20 in a week. Shouldn't be shocked. That's in their range of outcomes. But you also shouldn't be shocked if one of them has 10 for 200. I mean, they're both fully capable of that. So there's a big swing in wide receiver production week to week. But over the season, it's pretty predictable. You can generally predict where a wide receiver is going to end up. You just don't know when that production is going to happen. It's the opposite for running backs. For running backs, week to week, super easy. It is so easy to project running backs week to week. Their volume is insanely easy to predict. You look at Vegas, you look at implied totals, you look at pace of play, you look at opportunity in the past. It's simple. Season long, it's more difficult. And what are we doing right now in drafts is we're projecting season long. So why do people take running backs? You know, if it's so difficult to predict them, why don't we just always do RB0? Well, it's because the chart that I've shown you guys a lot of times. It's this value chart. Look at every single year except for 2015. 2015 was just the death of running backs. Everyone busted or got hurt. Every single one of them. So yeah, the value in that one season was there for wide receivers. Look at all of the boxes on all of these rectangles up there. Every single bar has 10 boxes. If a box is below 0, it's below the x-axis, that means that the running back was more valuable to have than the wide receiver that season. They're literally all above the axis, except for 2015, and a little bit of 2009. Every year, if you have the choice between the third overall or the third best at the end of the year running back versus the third best wide receiver, you always take the running back. That's why people go heavy on running backs early in the draft. Because we know from this other chart that I've made, your percent of hitting is so much higher in the first 4 rounds than anywhere else in the draft. So you have to think to yourself, okay, there's a position out there that even in PPR scoring is so much more valuable to have, I need to spend my high draft capital picks, the picks that pay off the most percent of the time, on that position. However, now you're confused because you're saying, all right, first he starts off saying that running backs are hard to predict. Then he tells us that even though they're hard to predict, we have to take them. You don't have to do anything. That's what the RB0 strategy has done. It has taken risk and kind of thrown it out the window. It's anti-fragility. Shawn Siegele, I believe, was the first person to create this. If he wasn't the first person, he was the first person I've seen create this strategy. And the premise is that every season, these running backs do bust, but it's important to hit on them. So how do we factor this in? Well, we say, all right, I'm not going to bust at the running back position. I'm going to spend all of my high capital picks on wide receivers. They're easy to project. I'm going to get some good ones, even if I bust on a few, which I will. You have to go into the draft knowing you're going to bust on half your picks. So early in the draft, maybe my first 4 or 5 picks, wide receivers. They have the highest upside because it's a little bit different with running backs and wide receivers. Wide receivers you can get late for easy production, but they don't have the same upside. Whereas some running backs late aren't going to see a lot of production, but they have massive upside if something were to happen. It's not really the case for wide receivers. Your massive upside guys are pretty much going in the first couple rounds. So the premise of this is that running backs get hurt more. When they get hurt, they're out for longer, and they're harder to project. So let's take the safer wide receiver that has still upside, that's easier to project in all of our high draft capital picks, and then just hammer running backs late. And another important thing that you don't see on mock drafts is the waiver wire. It's extremely important if you draft RB0 to draft high upside running backs late, but that you can also drop. Because every single season, there's guys like Kamara and Jamal Williams that come out on free agency, like Kenyon Drake, that are league winners. And if you can get 1 or 2 of those guys and couple them with wide receiver in the first 5 rounds, assuming you hit on 3 of them, 60% is, you should be about 60% the first 5 rounds. If you can do that, you won your championship. Because we know we can stream quarterback and get quarterback 6 production. We know that tight end, honestly, just try and hit on one later, mid to late in the draft. But if you don't, there's going to be someone you can stream each week. So if you forego running back, you hit on maybe 1 of your mid to late round running backs. You find 1 on free agency, you're good because you just killed wide receiver. So this is how I structure this video each season. I go over why, but then I go over what happened. And every single year, what I do, I've done it for 4 seasons now, so my 4th video of this, is I create a team. And I say, this is what it looks like when you draft RB0, and this is what it looks like when you don't. And I try to make both teams exactly what I would want to pick, going both strategies. And every single year, everyone in the comments section says that the value-based team is so much better than the RB0 team. They hate the RB0 team. But then every single season, the RB0 team crushes the value team. Just absolutely crushes it. 2016, I actually started keeping score, and it was 11-5 if they played like head-to-head every week. I stopped keeping track last season after like week 5 because it was actually embarrassing how much better the RB0 team was. Everyone thought the value-based team, because this is what we do. We look at mock drafts and we say, oh, that's terrible, without thinking about how this team can develop throughout the season and what would happen if we hit late. What we noticed last season was that there were a few running backs going late in drafts that had massive upside. And we said, why not take some wide receivers early and then take a shot on a Kareem Hunt, then take a shot on an Alvin Kamara? So that's what we did. In our premium rankings, we put Kamara and Hunt right at the top of the people you should be drafting, and then said hammer wide receivers early. And this is what teams turned out like. The RB0 team annihilated the value-based team. Even with multiple busts, this is a championship team. You might not think, looking at busts on teams, like how could it win a championship? It has so many busts. We're basically shooting for about like a 50% success rate with just maybe 3 or 4 studs. That's what you're shooting for when you do these drafts. That's why I always lean on the side of upside. Everyone wants to go safe. I lean on upside. Because when you lean on upside, you get Hunt, you get Kamara, and then you get to couple them with Kelsey and Michael Thomas. Did we miss on Crowder and Snead? Absolutely. Did it matter? Nope. It didn't matter one bit that you missed on those guys. because it's always easy to find a wide receiver to fill in, but we also had Tate and we also had Thomas. So you have seen last season's. What does this season look like? And what I tried to do is only vary the parts that were different. So if I drafted a wide receiver at a certain spot and another wide receiver on like each team, so I'll do an example. So say 11th round, I guess. I said tight end 11th round. That's what I wanted. I made sure that they were both the exact same player. So at the end of the season, it wasn't just like variance as to who got it. So I got Luck in the 10th in both, Doyle in the 11th in both. I got McGuire in the 13th in both because I like the upside there. So how are these teams different? Well, I just basically took first 4 rounds. This is from the 10th spot. I think I do the 10th spot every year. And I'll go over that actually first. When do you do this? Never do RB0 strategy if you have like a top 4 pick. It's just stupid. You take one of the 4 stud running backs. That's just what you do. The only way I would do RB0 is if you can start off with 2 studs. If you can start off with Odell and Julio, you can do RB0. If you want to start off with maybe like a Hopkins, if you can get Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Hopkins, Michael Thomas, something like that, you have to be able to get 2 studs and not reach. If you're reaching, it defeats the whole purpose. Just take the running back. So at the 10th pick, I like this strategy. So I started off Odell, Julio, Diggs, Amari Cooper. This is a 12-team league, PPR. You do not do this strategy in standard. Don't even ask me. It is not viable. You do not go RB0 in standard scoring. But in PPR, it's preferable if you have 3 wide receivers because that's just more options for you to do. But even in 2 wide receivers in a flex, I went Odell, Julio, Diggs, Cooper. I love that start to the draft. Then I didn't see a value in the 5th round at the wide receiver position. I thought Lamar Miller was being undervalued, so you take him. You don't have to go top 6 rounds wide receiver to do RB0. I took Miller in the 5th, and then I took Corey Davis, another wide receiver I love this season in the 6th round. Rex Burkhead, I think, is being undervalued. That's the whole point of RB0, find those undervalued options. So Rex Burkhead in the 7th. 8th round, went back to an undervalued wide receiver in Devin Funchess. Got an undervalued Luck, undervalued Doyle. We got Aaron Jones, Wilkins, and McGuire. We just went for upside. I think Aaron Jones could take that job. He doesn't need to start while he's suspended, so I don't really care that he's suspended for this team because he's not starting for me anyways. I'm taking the upside of him in an Aaron Rodgers offense. I'm taking the upside of Wilkins if something were to happen to Mac. He's now the running back in an Andrew Luck offense. And then Elijah McGuire, who I think is a great running back, who's being severely undervalued. I also love the value team, but there is a little bit less depth. Look at the wide receiver position. Let's just say Amari Cooper stinks again. You know, he has another season like last year where he just tanks. Take him out of both teams. RB0, you still have Julio, Odell, Diggs, Funchess, Corey Davis. You're fine. If he busts, you're absolutely fine. What if Amari Cooper busts on the value team? Well, now you're forced to start one of Corey Davis or Funchess, which is fine. But if you're in PPR, you'd like to start 3 wide receivers, in which case you have to start both Corey Davis and Funchess, and Tyrell Williams is your only other option. You're a little bit thinner. And you can throw that back. You can say, okay, you're also thinner at the running back position on the RB0 team, and you are. I agree with you. But that's what the free agency's for, and I'm not trying to get 4th place. So if I happen to bust on Miller and Burkhead, and none of my other running backs come out, and then this is the first season ever that no running backs show up on free agency, I'm going to struggle. But I'm going to struggle with a great quarterback, a phenomenal wide receiver core, and a good tight end. So struggle, but I can find options. If you're watching this video, you're good enough to find some satellite backs, like Hines. Hines, perfectly late. He's not going to be drafted in most leagues, and if he is, he's probably going to be dropped early in the season. You can find guys like that are going to give you a few points to make up for that void while you find a running back. So I'm not overly concerned. And the odds that all of Miller, Burkhead, Jones, Wilkins, and McGuire all bust before I can find a single running back on free agency is minimal. And we're shooting for upside, right? What if I found, let's pretend this was last season, but these are the picks from this season, okay? Let's pretend I find Alvin Kamara on free agency. Now I have an elite running back 1 with an elite wide receiver core. And that would basically be a championship team. All you have to do is hit on 1. If you hit on 1 running back on this other team, it doesn't help you as much because you don't have dominant wide receivers to go with it. You have great wide receivers, but those are like my bench options on the RB0 team. So the upside isn't as high. So that's all I'm trying to say is that RB0 is safe because you can find PPR options at the running back position, but it also has massive upside if you hit at the running back position. What I want to leave you with is to not be scared. Not be scared of what happened last season. Last season was just, I'm not going to say an anomaly because 2015 was the anomaly, but Watson got injured when he was having a great season. Luck didn't even play. Rodgers got hurt. We saw Mahomes play one game. We saw Jimmy G barely play any games. We saw Dak Prescott have a really down season. We saw Drew Brees have his lowest output season in a decade. We saw Mariota have a down season, and I'm sure there were more that had down seasons. Passing touchdowns were down across the league. Wide receiver production was down across the league. Scoring production was down across the league. So all of these things happened, and what do people do? They have a recency bias. They say, whoop, I can't draft wide receivers. Nothing happened. Go scroll through the years. Just scroll through the top 10 scoring for wide receivers year over year, and then look at last season. It wasn't that impressive. Especially look at the quarterbacks. It wasn't that impressive. I tend to think that's not going to happen again. I have high hopes for Mahomes and Jimmy G. I have very high hopes that Brees will return to what he's done for the past 15 years. I think Dak Prescott's going to have positive regression. I think Mariota is going to have a fantastic season. I think Luck will be back. I hope Watson doesn't get hurt again. I hope Rodgers doesn't get hurt again. But even if just a few of those things happen or don't happen last season, the narrative is completely different. So I don't want you to think that wide receiver is just dead and the teams are running the ball a ton. No. I've released the article, a little while back talking about this whole topic, but also talking about value at different positions. So check that out on our website. But a large part of that highlighted how much of an outlier certain seasons are. And I believe last season was an outlier for the quarterback and the wide receiver position. They will have positive regression. And if I told you a few years ago that you could pair Odell and Julio on the same team, you'd have thought I was nuts because those guys were going 4-5. But now they're not because people are scared of the wide receiver position because they think they need to lock up running backs, which I'm not saying you don't have to lock up running backs, but I'm saying if you can pair two elite wide receivers on your team that could absolutely finish 1-2. I mean, look at Odell, Julio, Diggs, Cooper. If you don't even like that, you could have gone Odell, Julio, Josh Gordon, Cooper. You could have gone Odell, Michael Thomas, T.Y. Hilton. I mean, I think Cooper's a great fourth-round pick. But there's so many different combinations of upside that you could put together. If you don't like Julio, don't take Julio. Take Michael Thomas or Keenan Allen. But I'm just showing you there are so many variations of upside if you have a later first-round pick that this is a completely viable strategy. Okay, that is the end of this season's RB0 strategy. Make sure in the comment section you answer the stat of the day. Make sure you're entered into the giveaway. But also make sure to let me know what you think of the video, what you think of the RB0 strategy, and what you think of different players that we can compare. Because remember, we're doing the early round targets breakdown. So different players that you want me to go over, leave it all in the comment section below. But that's the end of this one. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about you hit that like button? How about you subscribe if you're new? Thanks for watching.